Yo, so in Wuthering Waves, once you hit Yinlin level 45, you actually get a weapon box, and you get to choose any 5-star standard banner weapon from that weapon box. There's one weapon for every single weapon type in the game. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the best options are from this weapon box, and every player is going to want probably something different out of it. So let's go ahead and get into this. So obviously this video will not only cover what you might want to go for on the level 45 weapon box, but also what you might want to go for on the standard 5-star weapon banner, because obviously that's what you're also going to be potentially going for. The weapons from the 5-star standard banner are also the same weapons from that weapon box. Yo, I just want to butt in real quick and say something I think that is very, very important. I think that once you get enough of the 5-star characters in this game that you want to actually have, that rather than continue to pull on the character banner, that you should probably get like a couple of weapons from the weapon banner, or at least consider getting a couple of weapons from the weapon banner, because at least in the early stages of the game, you know that when you are pulling on the premium banner, that when you lose a 50-50, you're going to end up getting a standard 5-star character anyways. So I think it's actually more important to potentially get like a couple at least of these 5-star weapons before you go back to potentially pulling for more characters, because let's be honest, to get all of the resonance chains for every single character is going to take a really long time, but just getting one copy of a weapon does not take that much time, and the weapon banner is actually very generous. There's no 50-50. If you get a 5-star on the weapon banner, you get the weapon, and you can choose the weapon that you want as well. So definitely something to consider. Sorry to interrupt. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Static Mist. I think this weapon is absolutely correct. Obviously, there's only one weapon type, meaning there's 5 weapons out of the standard banner that you could potentially get, and there's only one of each type of weapon in that box, but this is an incredibly strong weapon. I think it's easily one of the best weapons you could go for out of that box. Now, some of you might not be into gun characters, but if you are into gun characters, this weapon is super duper strong. It has a flat attack stat and a crit rate stat. If you level it all the way up to 90, you'll have 588 attack, which is very strong, and you'll have 24.30 crit rate, which is massive and makes it much easier to build the character, especially in the early stages, because having crit value is very, very hard to get in those early stages of the game like we're in right now, and it obviously turns into more damage at the end of the day, pretty much no matter whether you're in the late game or whether you're in the early game. And it also is very important for these gun characters to get something like this, because this is literally the best gun weapon in the entire game right now. And we've already had drip marketing for patch 1.1. We don't know yet what's going to be coming in 1.2. We should be learning soon, probably like anytime between now and the next week. When they kind of changed up Yinlin's banner, it also sort of changed up their promo schedule a little bit, so we're not sure when we're going to get the patch 1.2 drip marketing, but for the foreseeable future, at least right now, this is quite literally the best gun weapon in the entire game. Again, we could be getting something off of a signature weapon in the future, but some people aren't going to be able to do that or justify going for that, and this is an incredibly good weapon to be able to use in the meantime. So let's go ahead and look at the passive. Rank 1, Stormy Resolution. It increases the energy regen by 12.8%, and when the outro skill is cast, it increases the incoming resonator's attack by 10%, stacking up to 1 time. I don't know why they include that. If it only stacks 1 time, they could just literally delete that. It doesn't matter. And this effect lasts for 14 seconds. So basically, you want to build up to that outro skill, use that outro skill when you're switching to another character, right? And then you'll give that next resonator that comes in a 10% attack buff. And you'll also have energy regen of 12.8%. That's obviously the passives on it. So this is obviously something that can be used on, you know, a gun character that's known as like a DPS character, but it can also be used on a sub DPS character or even a support character from the gun type of characters we have in the game right now. So obviously, this is a good weapon for somebody like Chishia. This is a good weapon for somebody like Mortifi. This is a good weapon for somebody like Alto. I believe those are the only gun characters we have in the game right now. Correct me if I'm missing somebody, but obviously any gun character could utilize this, whether they're a main DPS, sub DPS, or a support type of character. It's the best gun in the game right now. I think on average, there might be some nuance to that. There might be some goofy builds or like switch builds, you know, like hot swap builds that might want to use a different type of gun. As you can see from this, I'm going for it on my banner pulls, and out of the weapon box, I'm probably going to be going for the Emerald Genesis. So I'm going for these 2 weapons, the Emerald Genesis and the Static Mist, just so that you guys are aware of what I find value in this game right now. All right, so since I just mentioned it, let's go over the Emerald of Genesis right now. This at level 90 will have a flat attack stat of 588, and at level 90, it'll have a crit rate stat of 24.30%. We don't have to go over again why that is so strong on basically any character, early game or late game. It's very powerful. And just so you guys are aware, the gun and this sword are the weapons that have those effects. You're not going to see that crazy, attack and crit rate on the other weapons. We'll go ahead and look at those in just a second. Well, let's look at the passive ability that this has first. Stormy Resolution. It increases the energy regen by 12.8%. When the resonance skill is cast, it increases the attack by 6%, stacking up to 2 times. This effect lasts for 10 seconds. Sorry, I had to burp. So this effect, just so you guys are aware, most characters will probably be able to get both of these stacks. But some characters, because you have to think about the future, may not necessarily be able to get both stacks depending on what kind of character they are, because you have to be able to use your resonance skill twice within 10 seconds to get this buff. So depending on cooldowns of characters, you might not get both stacks. So it's 6% no matter what, and it's going to be 12% if you can get there, right? So this weapon can be used on characters like Rover. It can be used on Chang-Li, who's going to be coming out in patch 1.1, who's going to be a sword character, just so that you guys are aware. You could use it on Sanhua, you could use it on Don Jin, you could use it on Yang Yang. Basically, any character that uses a sword can utilize this weapon because it's built to be able to be used on basically anybody, whether they are a DPS, a sub-DPS, or a supportive style character. It can be used on basically anyone, which makes this weapon so darn good basically anywhere. And it's the best sword in the entire game right now. When Chang-Li releases in patch 1.1, she will have a signature weapon coming out with her, and that weapon will power creep this weapon for many DPS characters. But because of the energy regen on this weapon, this might end up being a better character for a lot of sub-DPS characters. It just sort of depends, right? I just wanted to let you guys know about that it is the best right now, but for DPS characters, it might get power crapped in 1.1 by Chang-Li's weapon. Alright, so let's go over the Cosmic Ripples, because I think this weapon is very relevant considering Yinlin is out right now, and we also have characters like Verena and Encore and all sorts of other characters that could be using rectifier weapons, such as this one right here. Now at full level, max capacity, level 90, this will have a flat attack stat of 500, and it will have a attack percent stat of 54%. So, like I was saying, you're not going to see that crit rate stat on every single one of these standard 5-star weapons. In fact, you're only going to see it on those 2 we just went over earlier. Let's read the passive, Stormy Resolution. It increases the energy regen by 12.8%. When dealing basic attack damage, it increases the basic attack damage bonus by 3.2%, stacking up to 5 times. This effect lasts for 8 seconds and can be triggered 1 time every 0.5 seconds. So, this weapon is the second best weapon in the game right now for Yinlin, so a very, very solid choice if you want to go that route. However, without the crit on the stats for this weapon, you may want to consider the Battle Pass weapon. I believe it is, let's go ahead and take a look at it right now. The Battle Pass weapon for Yinlin is this thing over here. It is the Augment. It has a crit rate stat on it, which makes it a lot easier to be able to build the character. This is what I'm currently using on Yinlin right now because I was a little bit unlucky pulling for her, so I was low on resources pulling for her signature weapon. But this is basically a dumbed down version, like not as powerful of a version of her signature weapon. So this is definitely a very solid choice to go for if you wanted to go that route. Unfortunately, that would mean that you'd have to buy the Battle Pass, which is $10, and you get, all of these bonus rewards and other stuff like that, including a weapon box that allows you to choose one of these weapons here. This weapon is also very, very good on Verena. It's also very, very good on Encore. One reason why it's so good on Verena is because Verena actually scales off of attack. So this is incredibly good on Verena, and obviously it's good on Encore. Encore uses rectifiers like this as well. You could also use the Augment we were just taking a look at on Encore too. I have a friend who's using that weapon on her. It's very, very strong, and I'm probably going to use that other weapon on her too, because as good as Cosmic Ripples is, you know what I mean? I'm going to probably be going for either that gun or the sword. It just depends on what characters you're maining and what characters you see value in that you want to build, whether you'd go for this or something else. But I really appreciate having the crit value in my substats personally. It makes it much easier to build the character, and in turn usually turns into more damage. So let's go over the Lustrous Razor next, because I think this weapon has a lot of relevance right now as well, because a lot of people ended up pulling Jian and they didn't necessarily go for his weapon. Or a lot of people have pulled Golcharo because they wanted to use Golcharo with Yinlin, for example. There's obviously a lot of other reasons why this weapon's relevant, but those are the main ones in my eyes right now. At level 90, this has a flat attack stat of 588, and it has 36.45% attack. and that's really, really strong. However, again, it doesn't have that crit value that you really want to see, in my opinion, on a weapon for this early stages of the game. But it is very strong if you can get some really good crit value in your substats from your echoes, etc., etc. And the passive increases the energy regen by 12.8%, which like you're going to see that on like all of these weapons, right? But this next part is usually different. When the resonance skill is cast, resonance liberation damage bonus is increased by 7%, stacking up to 3 times. This effect lasts for 12 seconds. So this is actually pretty good on Jian as well, because he really wants to use his ult, which is the resonance liberation. That's a lot of us call it ultimates or bursts still because we're so used to other games, but in this game it's called the resonance liberation, and that's where most of Jian's damage actually comes from. It's where a lot of Kelcharo's damage comes from as well. In fact, this is known as Kelcharo's best in slot weapon right now. Now, that does mean you have to get really, really, really cracked, really, really god tier substat rolls on your echoes in order to make this thing really, really work, because if you're not critting, it won't be as strong. Now, obviously in the early stages of the game, many of you might not necessarily be worried about crits right now, but it's something that we should all be building towards. So this is a very, very powerful weapon. However, it doesn't give us that crit value that we really, really want. As I said, though, this is technically Kelcharo's best in slot, but you have to get some really crazy rolls in order for it to be able to be as powerful as it could be. Its potential is very high. However, I still see the value in something like Jian's weapon that has, crit value on it, or, some other weapon that could be coming in the future. This is, again, another weapon that has a battle pass, that could be used instead of it. Let's go ahead and take a look here. So this Autumn Trace is another weapon that has crit value from the Battle Pass that you could potentially use. Yes, that means you have to pay the $10 for the Battle Pass to be able to get that weapon box from it to be able to use, but this is a very, very solid choice, giving us that crit value off of it that we really, really want, allowing us to potentially be able to choose a different weapon from that weapon box that we might be able to use on another character that also has crit value, such as that sword or that gun. Now let's go ahead and go over these Abyss Surges. This is the last weapon we need to go over for this weapon box, so we're almost there. Now, this weapon at level 90 will have a flat attack stat of 588, and it will have an attack percent stat of 36.45. And the passive ability for this is the Storming Resolution. Increases the energy regen by 12.8%. When hitting a target with Resonance Skill, it increases the basic attack damage by 12%, lasting for 8 seconds. When hitting a target with basic attacks, it increases the Resonance Skill damage bonus by 10%, lasting for 8 seconds. So this weapon is a pretty solid choice, but again, it doesn't have that crit value that you'd really, really want to see. It could be used on characters like Genshin, it could be used on characters like Ling Yang, or even characters like Yan Wu, but Yan Wu might potentially want something different because he is more of a hybrid style character. Sure, Genshin is similar as well, but this is obviously a very solid choice for her. Yan Wu might be built, for something more janky that could potentially use something like a 4-star or a 3-star instead. I'm just mentioning options you have. Now, again, as another option, the Surge Abysses is pretty solid. However, there's another option for us from that Battle Pass. And I'm going to just keep comparing to the Battle Pass weapons because they're typically very strong as well. Sorry that I keep doing it for anyone that doesn't have the Battle Pass, but that this does have a crit rate but it has a crit rate option from the Battle Pass. The Stonard. It has a crit rate value that is pretty solid on it, and it makes it a lot easier to build characters, and it typically turns into more damage. Wallbreaker. When Resonance Skill is cast, it increases the caster's Resonance Liberation damage by 18%, lasting for 15 seconds. So if you guys have ever played Genshin or Ling Yang, they can get a lot from their Resonance Liberation damage bonus. So this is a very, very solid choice for those characters we were just talking about. So definitely don't feel like you're settling for something if you end up using this instead. This is actually a very, very solid choice. So let me know what weapon you're going for off of your level 45 weapon box, and let me know what weapon you're going for out of the weapon banner, because you can choose what weapon you're going for right now. As you can see, I'm going for the gun, now I'm going for the sword, but just by clicking a couple of buttons. Anyways, if you like gacha gaming, Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.